What's up, everybody? Nick Wire, bad for the 10th inning, here with another episode of This Day in Sports History. In yesterday's episode, we saw Nolan Ryan become the first pitcher to get 5,000 strikeouts in the MLB. We don't have anything quite like that today, but we have a couple of no-hitters to get into, some U.S. national championships to talk about, and some more Olympic Games. So if y'all enjoy this video, leave a like on it. If you're new to the channel, like what you see, hit that subscribe button. Let's get into it. This Day in Sports History. And we start off today in 1897 with one of those U.S. national championships. On the men's side, Robert Wren would beat Wilberforce Eves 4-6, 8-6, 6-3, 2-6, 6-2 to win his fourth U.S. singles title and his fourth major. Move up a decade to 1907 and we go to Major League Baseball. We have a no-hitter to talk about when Howie Kamnitz of the Pittsburgh Pirates would no-hit the New York Giants 1-0 in a 5-inning game, which was called Due to Darkness. Now we move up to the 1920 Olympics, and American Warren Kaloa would win the first of two consecutive Olympic gold medals in the 100-meter backstroke, besting teammate Ray Kedris in 1 minute 15.2 seconds. Now we go back to the U.S. National Championships in 1926. On the women's side, Mola Mallory would defeat Elizabeth Ryan 4-6, 6-4, 9-7 to claim her 8th and final U.S. singles title and her 8th and final Grand Slam singles title. We stick with the U.S. National Championship, this time in 1930, and Betty Shoemaker would defeat Anna McCune Harper 6-1, 6-4 to win her lone Grand Slam singles title. 17 years later in 1947, we had the first edition of the Baseball Little League World Series happen in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and 11 of the 12 teams would actually be from Pennsylvania, the other being from New Jersey, so it definitely wasn't the worldwide affair that it is today. But in the final, the Maynard League would defeat the Lock Haven All-Stars 16-7 to win the inaugural Little League World Series. 6 years later in 1953, we start out in cycling, and Arie van Vliet would become the world champion sprinter, claiming his final championship in his career. Then in the F1 World Drivers' Championship, Alberto Ascari would clinch his second and consecutive F1 championship after winning the Swiss Grand Prix, and this would be his second and final F1 championship. We go back to cycling in 1969, and Audrey Michelmurray would win the World Cycling Championships in Czechoslovakia. Stay in 1969, and Une de Mai of France would win the International Trot at Roosevelt Raceway in Czechoslovakia. Now we move up to 1991, and the third edition of the Athletics World Championships would open in Tokyo, Japan. Back to Major League Baseball in 1992, and Dennis Eckersley, who previously set the record for most consecutive saves at 40, would be the first pitcher to record 40 saves in 4 different seasons. 11 years later in 2003, the 9th edition of the Athletics World Championships would open in Saint Denis, France. Now we start with the Olympic Games in 2004, and Kelly Holmes would win the first leg for 800 1500 meter double, taking the gold medal for Great Britain in the 800 meter at 1 minute 56.38 seconds. Then in the men's 400 meters, there would be an American sweep with Jeremy Warner taking the gold in 44 seconds, ahead of Otis Harris, silver, and Derek Brew, bronze. Finally in those games, in softball, the USA would defeat Australia 5-1 with Lisa Fernandez pitching and leading this team to victory. Now we move to the Beijing Games in 2008, and we will start in women's basketball when the American team, led by the likes of Lisa Leslie, Sue Bird, and Diana Taurasi, would win the gold medal over Australia in a 92-65 victory to claim their 6th of 8 women's basketball gold medals. Then in men's football, Angel Di Maria of Argentina would score the 58th minute game winner as Argentina would defeat Nigeria 1-0 to claim their 2nd consecutive title and their 2nd overall title. Now we get into the long distance running, and Konanisa Bakala of Ethiopia would wrap up the 5,000, 10,000 meter double when he would take the gold in the 5K at 12 minutes 57.82 seconds. Now we move over to diving in those games, and Australian Matthew Mitchum would win the men's 10 meter platform gold to prevent the Chinese team from winning every diving event. And Mitchum would actually achieve the highest score for an individual dive in Olympic history at 112.10. 1 year later in 2009, we have a couple of golf events to talk about, and we will start at the Solheim Cup. And the USA would win their third consecutive cup with a 16-12 victory over Europe, winning 8 of the 12 singles to dominate the final day. Then in the tradition senior men's golf, Mike Reed at 16 under would win his second Champions Tour major with a birdie on the first playoff hole against runner-up John Cook. We end today's video off in women's golf in 2015 at the Canadian Open, and Lydia Ko at 12 under would win after a playoff with Stacey Lewis to win her third Canadian Open. So that's what happened on this day in sports history. If I left out any events, I do apologize. If I mispronounced any names, I also apologize. But I'll see everybody tomorrow for Nico Dwyer in the 10th inning. See ya.